Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of UnderTheSchoop. The first episode, the pilot episode. The last one was basically just an intro video, but this one is the real deal. It's the real thing right now. I hope everybody that's tuning in had a blessed Sunday, a Sunday full of God's grace and love, and that you will be blessed by this episode. This episode is called Fatherhood, or basically my journey from becoming like basically a teenager to a father, which is kind of crazy because it's already been like kind of 9 years that I've been a dad. But I really wanted to talk about this because it has been a crazy journey. And also, just now I'm learning like what really manhood is and how it affects basically fatherhood because a man is basically someone that should be a leader but also should show emotional how do we call that, literally protection. So when we talk about this type of stuff, we normally do not talk about that. To be a good father, you first need to know how to be a good man, and most of the times that is where it goes wrong because most of us do not know how to be men, and that's why that goes hand in hand. Manhood goes hand in hand with fatherhood, and I've been on a journey of understanding what manhood is, and I also kind of started creating uh, a correlation between manhood and fatherhood. And I want to talk about that because I was raised in a household without a father. I had my granddad that was a father figure, but even that was just basically an image of how a father should be in culture and not really based on faith and what God wanted us to be as men and as fathers. And that's why that's so important because the other part about it is also my grandma was a Christian, but still, even there, you could see like a woman cannot lead a child. A woman, the only thing that a woman can do is lead a child in the aspects that a woman can lead, but you still need to have a manly figure in the household to lead. And most of the times, what happens is like with those type of situations is that even though you have a man in the household, that man also has his ways of that he learned how to be a father, that he learned how to be a man, and that kind of gets like dripped down to you, and you don't know how to handle situations when you are in that situation because you will also kind of create the same thing that you went through in the past. You will create it for your family, but that's just because like you do not know better. But the only way that you know better is not by blaming it like on your past, is by like really finding out what manhood is. And that's what's so important because like I said already, manhood is connected to fatherhood. So for you to know how to be a good father, you need to know how to be a good man. For you to know how to be a good man, you need to be under the covenant of God, which is important because even in the beginning, when God created man for man to be submitted under him. God created Adam, man, in his own image. God created woman out of Adam. So even there you see like basically the man was first. So if a man is basically not submitted under God to understand what the biblical meaning is of manhood, even when he becomes a father, he will not lead his household or he will not be able to be a good dad in the aspect that should be. He will just roll with the punches. He will just do things how culture define it to be. And that was for me the biggest revelation that I had basically this year. So that's why I wanted to bring it up in the podcast, guys. Um like I said, I was raised by my grandfather, but what happened was also basically through everything that went on and my granddad kind of got sick, I had to step up and become like a caregiver. Like I was like 11, 12, so not really a childhood. So it was also the definition of becoming an adult quicker than I had to be, and still not understanding what it was to really be a man. It was just rolling with the punches. And the other thing was also like one of the things that kind of defined manhood. that would lead to like the wrong concept of fatherhood is like, okay, um I sleep around, I become a father, I don't have to be um involved emotionally with my kids. I just have to provide the money and that's fine. Even when you get married, that can be a misconception, because what happens is like you will always believe like, okay, I should just only provide money and not be emotionally there for my children. And as a young adult, that even the navigation of that is more difficult, because basically what happens is like you become a young father and you are basically still learning. Even even if you were not a young adult, like fatherhood is all about learning and keep on learning. But the best way that you can learn is learn by the word, learn by the word of God, learn by the one that created you, and he will guide you. Like a loving father is a father that corrects. A loving father is a father that has patience. A loving father is a father that leads by example. Even all those things you learn like through knowing who Jesus is. And that goes back to the concept about a kingdom man, a man that is submitted under God, to understand um the biblical way of being a man. And it's kind of crazy when you think about it, because when I think about my life, um when you look at it, um half of my family have had kids before they got married, and after that they learned like how to be that. And even then it was still like some still have like the thing of like manhood and fatherhood outside of like the right um view and even frame of God. And when you think about that, it kind of brings shed light upon certain things, especially when I think about me and my kids, because I have a daughter and a son. And when I think about my daughter, I think about how basically it's not only about protecting my daughter for like men that also have been raised in culture, but also it's about being a dad that knows like, okay, this is how I should like point the arrow and guide my daughter and even my son in the correct way. Because like my son should be the protector of my daughter, because like that's what is as a man also, be there emotionally. So I gonna protect my daughter, but at the same time I need to invest in my son to let him know that certain things, this is how he should behave himself, this is how he should conduct himself. At the end of the day, you can plant those seeds. But that's why it's important, I feel like, to know what manhood is, to be able to know what fatherhood is. Because once you start submitting to God, he will start pointing you out to certain things that have been a blockage in how you conduct yourself as a man, how you conduct yourself as a father, how you even conduct yourself as a husband. I'm not a husband yet, and that also kind of like shed light on some other stuff, because when you think about it, also it is like even fatherhood was supposed to be created under the covenant. The first covenant is basically you with God, because you need to have a relationship with God. The second covenant is basically you find a woman, that woman, you marry her. After you marry her, you create a family. And after you create a family, that's what it is. Like then fatherhood comes, because then you are that. So that means like not only that, the woman is also dependent on how you lead. Even though the woman is submitted to God, you are still a leader in that household. So a lot of us, because of the screwed ways that manhood has been defined, we are not standing in the place that we need to be, to create that safe space, to create that image of like, okay, God is center, I have my relationship with God. After that, I go and find a wife and take her away from our family and build a family. So we become parents right now. Okay. So she has certain qualities that she can lead the children in, but you have qualities as a dad that is like, okay, leadership. That's the first one. You have like the ability to show like the path, to be an example in how a man should be, because like even with let's just say this, even like if you have a daughter, like for my daughter, I started realizing like one of the things that I always do with my daughter right now is because I have a son. When my daughter comes in, one thing I tell my daughter is like, listen, honey, like you have to go and wear your clothes where where basically your brother is not. Because what happens is like you're already showing her that there is to have to be a certain respect for our body. And that's the only way you can do that. Because her body is a temple, right? God says like basically your body is a temple, right? So you by saying that you're also educating, but that's also by explaining. And the only way that you can do that is basically by knowing the word and leading your kids by the word, but also by example. Another funny thing that I when I think about that is like I think it was a couple of weeks ago. What happened was with my daughter, she started asking me questions, and the only way that I could answer that was by being in my word. And as a young adult, when I think back how it used to be, I could have answered those questions to her. I could not see that because even I was not leading by example. Um, I wasn't with their mom. So I'm like, their mom is married now, and I am just walking my path with God, but I'm also learning how to be a man. So when I get married with a woman that God has for me, that I'm able to show them even that image, because even though they were like not like raised or born like in marriage, I can still pray to God and lead by an example that they start knowing, okay, so this is how it should be. Because at the end of the day, God corrects everything. Even when we walked away, even when we went a different path, He still does that. So that's one of the things that's important to know. Like, if you want to be a good parent, if you want to walk this path of parenthood, it's important for you us to all to be submitted on the God, especially men. What else? Yeah, so I think it's in Psalm 124. Let me see. It says, let me see what it says basically. Check just to be sure so I don't say anything wrong with that. Mm, talks basically about I cannot find it right now, but it talks basically about like pointing the arrows in the right direction. And Pastor Mitchell was also talking about that, pointing the arrows in the right direction. As a father, the only thing you can do is point your kids in the right direction, guide them in the right direction. But you cannot do that, like I said already, if you're not like anchor in the right um mindset, but only that in anchor in scripture, anchor in like a relationship with God, anchor like in obedience, because obedience creates that. Obedience creates greatness. Um, so is what we have to do as men and as fathers. As fathers, like it will be tough because like as they always define about moms that moms have it rough, but when you truly understand the concept of a man, when you truly understand that if men do not take their call, if they not take their position, society will go backwards. I mean, that kind of already emphasizes like on a fatherhood. If men do not take their positions as father in the correct way, um society will just go backwards. And when society go backwards, the world will go backwards, because you will have kids that do not know the love of a father. You will have kids that do not know how to conduct themselves, because they only get half of the image of a household. They only get half of the image of what it means um to have loving parents, but parents that are anchored in the word, in God. So that's one of the things that I talk of, that I think that's really important. And that's why I'm always like thinking about fatherhood and manhood. They go hand in hand, and trust me, it's a journey of rediscovering it. It's a journey of understanding this concept better, because I have been having my struggles with fatherhood, especially like I said, since I did not know my dad. I just got to know my dad when I was 18, and even that was like a rough patch, because what it also creates is like now you need to go through a path of understanding where it came from. And that's why important like is that once you get to that point and that God shines the light upon that, upon the thing about, okay, why did you not have a father in your life, and how did this affect the way that you have been a father to your kids? Now it's time to like re-examine that. And one of the things that is really important is about like the rejection part. You will start to understand that maybe your parents, especially your dad, went to a rejection phase, and also or went like I said to the wrong image of manhood, the wrong image of fatherhood, which was like, okay, I'm just gonna hook up, sleep around, create a lot of kids, and that's it. But then you sometimes fall into the trap that you do not want to be like your dad, and eventually it still leads to that because you are still doing it out of a wrong kind of mindset, not the mindset of how Christ created you to be. So that's why I feel like that's also really important to understand that, especially as men, as young adults, do not say like, I'm not gonna be like my dad. You have to say like this: I'm gonna be like the dad that created me. I'm gonna be like the one that chose me. I'm gonna be like the one that knew me since I was in my mother's womb. And the only way to understand, the only way to know that person is by diving into the world that he created, is by having a relationship with him. And that's the deepest thing that I can really tell people, and people need to understand. And out of my own journey as a father, I feel like that's the most important thing, because even when you read that, you will understand how to, like, even when you reconnect with your own father, how to have those conversations. And I feel like even people that have been with their dads, that have their dads in their life, sometimes um what goes on is the dad is in their life, but the dad also had like a definition of what culture is like. So the dad is there like financially, but the dad is not there emotionally. So that brings a lot of like different other dynamics in. So when they get their kids, they also feel like, okay, I'm gonna be present, but at the same time not present, because there's a difference between being present and being present. And that's what I'm discovering right now, because I noticed like, because of like my, the things that I went through, and because of how God is kind of like, hey, shaping it now, and I'm also putting in the work. I'm understanding like presence mean really being like not only um just in the room, but also emotionally listening to your kids and guiding them in the correct path. Because your kids, they watch, your kids, they notice. And if you are just there in the space, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually you're not there, it's the same thing as you're not being there. And that's but when you are there as a dad, you need to be there 100%, and not just a little bit. It's gonna take time, because it took time for me too, because like I said, like, didn't have that image, didn't have that perfect like image. And come on, your dads will not be perfect. Like, even when I became a father, like, still right now, I'm not, I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm still learning, but it's like the effort that we do is like the step by steps that we do take to get there. And I feel like the Lord will make that happen if you submit it. Not only that, it will also help you, especially if you have been if you have made kids outside of marriage. And the concept and the thing is like, hey, you want to be a better dad later on, not only for the kids that you have right now, but for the kids that you're gonna have with the person that God has for you. It's important to first like understand what manhood is, for you to understand what fatherhood also is. And that's what is important, to explore that and read the word, what the word said about manhood and about fatherhood. And like I already said in the beginning, we have a father that is the perfect example of being um a good father, and that's God. And he basically sent his son to die for us on the cross for our sins. And it's about the unconditional love. And sometimes as fathers, we feel the need to, we need like have a love back, to give love. And That sometimes is not even needed, because one of the things that I started noticing in my journey with my kids is like, my kids don't always have to tell me they love me. They can just show me back. They can just show me by action, or like I show them by action that I love them, and they come and they hug me and stuff like that. And that's important. But yeah, men, we as men, yeah, we struggle with that. We struggle with the fatherhood aspect. We struggle with showing love, but we also struggle like with being emotionally present in the noun. And that's one of the things that I feel like we should start looking at and understanding. And it's like I talked to various people about this, even women like that I talked to, how basically they slept with someone and that dad is not really present, or if he is present, like his past trauma still have influence over how he is as a dad. But we cannot give fault to that sometimes, because like that's also like the scars that come from um how their dad has been raised, how they have been created, how their dad have been like raised up and all that, like I said. But that's why it's important, like I said, always to go back to the anchor, go back to the one that created us, to understand that. So one of the topics that I will definitely be talking about in further episodes is like the truly concept of manhood, because right now I'm just connecting it to fatherhood and connecting it to like covenant, and talking about this story of how basically fatherhood is a journey of understanding how to be a father. And like I said, that's only possible by being a man. um because a lot of us are fathers but are more male than men. You will To understand that, you will need to understand that basically all are born male, but to be truly a man, you need to submit under God. That I will keep repeating that. So a lot of us are like fathers but males, and that's the thing that is always the heavy thing, because like a man will stand firm in his place, and not even as a dad also, but also firm as like, okay, I'm gonna be good just because this is how my father, that is the correct example, wants me to be, and I will follow what he tells me, so that it can become greatness, like generations can benefit from it. Because that's one of the things about fatherhood. Fatherhood is not only is not for us. Fatherhood is for the generations to come. How you lead as a man, as a father, will trickle down to the generations and generations to come. And that's what I want all young men to understand. I'm only 30 and I'm still discovering this, but we are the examples for the generations and generations to come. Our children will tell their children, this how dad raised me, this how dad was. Dad was anchored in the word, dad was anchored in kindness, dad was anchored in patience. And that only way you can do that is by leading by example, which starts with, yeah, being anchored in the word and in God. So that's why I'm saying, like, always remember that fatherhood is just being in the covenant and being submitted under God, so that you can be emotionally able to lead your kids. Because that is what it comes, that's what it is. It's like, just, hey, your kids also are human, they also have emotions, they are also going through that things, no matter how young they are. And I'm noticing that in my son. My son is like really a joyful person, but he is also really emotional. And that's the one of the parts that I notice. He's the same thing as me in that aspect. I'm logical, but I'm also really emotional. So I need to approach him in a different way than I approach my daughter. And the only way that you can learn that is also by being patient. And patient is one of the fruits of the spirit. And also my daughter, for my daughter, is like sometimes she has like an attitude, and that comes to self-control in, because like basically children's are gifts, and we should treat them as gifts. But the problem sometimes is like you are trying so hard to not make the same mistakes that your parents made or that your dad made, that sometimes you're not open to listen to what they have to say, look at their emotions. And that's what I'm learning right now, because like the thing is, like, God shows us like how he listens. God shows us like how he checks our emotion. He knows like every like thing that we go through. And the only way that we can learn also how to be fathers is by asking God for wisdom, just like King Solomon asked God for wisdom in 1 Kings 3. He asked God basically for the wisdom and not for wealth. And God said, because you ask for wisdom, I will give you wealth. And not only that, like even further down the book, where the prostitute woman comes up, and the one of them sleeps over their son and the other one steals the son. And basically what happened was like King Solomon is talking to them, and King Solomon wants to like kill one of the babies, but the one that basically the child is, their kid, is telling them like, hey, just give it to the other woman. That's love, because that's truly love. But the other one's like, no, kill, kill. So we both don't have. So King Solomon then knew like basically the one that said give the kid basically to the other woman is the real mom. So it's also important to ask God for wisdom, even as a parent, as a father. I think it's more important as a father, because you need to have wisdom to lead. Because at the end of the day, your children are also a part of your discipleship. So men are definitely led to disciple, and it starts at home. It starts at discipling your son, discipling your daughters, and giving them the right tools to move forward and create. Because even when you think about Genesis, where it says like when you take your wife out of the out away from their parents, you go and you need to procreate. Even that, when you think about it, is all about like, for procreation is generations and generation will come. So once you start doing that, you need to take the responsibility of leading your kids in the correct way. So that's one of the things that I think is important, is always ask for wisdom to God, especially as young men, because without wisdom we cannot lead. Without wisdom we cannot be the example, not even for our kids alone, but also for other kids out there, for other um for kids that did not have a dad in their life. Like I did not have a dad in my life. I ask God every day for that aspect, like that later on I can be someone that God pours into, so I can be there for kids that are in need of that example. And it starts first with me learning who God wants me to be as a man and as a father, to lead my kids, and then I can also be a part of like the community and society to help other men grow and help raise um children that are anchored in the way that God intended families to be, and men to be, and even women to be. Because that's another thing. As a dad, we only think we can raise men up, but we also raise our kids, our daughters up. Like I said, for example, one of the things is like, we only think a mother should be doing that, but a dad shows their daughter what is an example of a man. Like I said, what I talked about with my daughter, like she needs to go out there and put her clothes separate from her brother, because then you're already learning her to respect her body. But not only that, it's also about like how you um show that you're a man. That's how basically the daughter will make the distinction between who is truly a man and who is truly a male, who is truly someone that just want to mess around with her. So that's why it's important as dads for us to stand firm in the word and stand firm in what God is saying so we can be the right examples. I hope that makes sense. So that's a little bit what I wanted to talk about. I think I read a little bit, I talked a little bit too much, but this is like the first episode. And if there is any, like, improvements that you guys think I should be doing, you guys can always um drop down in the comments. But for now, that is it. I hope you guys have a blessed night, and love you all. And stay tuned for the next episode, which will probably have a guest. I don't know yet. I will pray about it. But I hope you guys have a beautiful night, or yeah, morning, afternoon, does not matter because I'm like in Europe right now, and probably most of the people that I know are in the States. I love you all. Have a blessed night. And I hope you guys enjoy this content. See you guys later.
Hey, thank you for watching the full video. Why don't you click on the subscribe button to become part of the Under the Scope family and click on the bell button to be notified for further episodes. Thank you very much.